when you're dealing with big businesses, as I was dealing with banks, I was dealing with insurance companies, I was dealing with manufacturers, I was dealing with all sorts, the whole selling process has to change. And it took me some time to understand that actually I'm no longer selling to this person who's had in front of me. And I'm here to support them and serve them and make sure that they get what they require from this. And once you change that narrative in your mind, then no matter whatever pressure you're getting from your management about the metrics, right, the amount of deal closures, all of that noise that happens, and it makes selling so much easier because you're not now trying to push a product, you're trying to push an outcome.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Kronos Group podcast. I am, of course, the host, Jerry Brazee, and let me tell you about my guest from across the pond today, coming to us from London, Sanjai Mehta. He is with us, and he has been in business and sales. He's got a dog, too. We all have that same problem.
Yeah.
Done that many times.
The way.
Mine's usually scratch on the door when I'm in here trying to record these things. But for over 30 years, he has, across different markets and industries, has been in selling. And now he is spending his time coaching and mentoring people who are trying to find success themselves, like we all are. So I'm interested to hear what he has to say. He also hosts a podcast called Success Matters, where he talks about a lot of the same things that we talk about: leadership, selling, what success actually looks like, something that is near and dear to my heart, as you all know. And once you've been in that game long enough, you know that it's not just about the money and the numbers. So today we're going to sit down with him. We're going to talk about those things: sales, leadership, what changes as you get older in business maybe, and what people misunderstand about success. I like this part: when they are still early in that climb. With all of that said, Sanjai, so good to have you on. I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Jerry, thank you very much for having me on the podcast. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, very much so. Let's start off with some background. Tell us about your early years, kind of what brought you, before we're going to talk about the things that you're doing these days and what you have done professionally. Give us a Sanjai as a kid growing up kind of background. Tell us how you got where you are now.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's you're talking 60 long years there. So we'll see how we go with that. So I was born in East Africa. My heritage is Indian, as you can probably tell from the color of my skin. And my parents had immigrated to Kenya when, in the sort of 40s, when the British Empire was, in existence. And there was an opportunity for them to move there. So my father was like a clerical worker and my mum was a housemaker. After Kenya got its independence, my parents decided that they were going to move back to India. Things didn't work out, went back to Kenya and ended up in the UK, which is where I was, I was about 3 years old when we came here. So most of my life has been in the UK, but I do have a foot in different cultures, the Indian culture, the British culture, and to a little extent, the African culture that kind of came with the family as well from our long time in Kenya. So my background is, I think like most people, I followed a certain path. I followed a path which said, get educated, get married, have kids, get a good job, and that's your life set. And that's the life that I actually followed for some time. So got a degree in chemistry, decided I wasn't going to follow that, did a master's degree in business. And as you said in the introduction, for about 30 years, I've had a career in sales, primarily in the IT space. So selling, computing, and computers when you could buy computers by mail order, as well as in the telecom space. And more recently, I've moved out from the direct sales role to actually coaching salespeople, but also doing some coaching for people who are looking at where they are in their life and what they want to do and how they want to move their life forward. So that's me in a nutshell. Married with 2 kids and a dog.
Well, yeah, clearly we know about the dog part. So what, as an immigrant coming from, sounds like you were, did I hear you right? You were born in India and you moved to East Africa. Is that what you said?
No, I was born, my parents were going to move to India and they did the move before I was born. Things didn't work out in India. They moved back to Kenya. I was born in Kenya. We lived there for a couple of years and then moved to the UK.
I see. And do you remember your time in Africa?
Very vaguely. I was only like 2.5 when we came to the UK. So there's certain things that I remember. There was our house was on a cul-de-sac, curved cul-de-sac, and it had a green in front of it. I always remember that green. And three years ago, we went back to Kenya, and we went in search of our house. So my sister was with me, my wife, and my daughter, my niece, and my sister's husband, and we went back in search of our house. So we're back in the neighborhood, and we pulled up to where the house used to be, and it had been replaced by a 6-story apartment block, which was actually really, really disappointing. I was like very gutted that, this memory that I had of the green, and the green itself had been built on. It was no more. And we felt quite sad actually that our house was no longer there, because you still have a bit of a tie to it. It's a house my dad built as well. So, that had kind of special double memory to it.
It's interesting about that too. I think I can fill in that blank for you a little bit. I did the same thing years ago. The longest time we spent in one house was for 8 years, and I have 8 brothers and sisters. There was 9 of us, so 11 with my parents, and we had a little 3-bedroom house that we lived in. Everybody was living on top of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back years later and walked through the house. I happened to see it was for sale. This is 40 years later. And here's what I'll tell you about it. It was not nearly as big as I remember.
Yeah.
There's all of those people, and I was a little kid, and all I kept thinking is, man, how in the world, you're looking at it through the adult eyes. I was like, how in the world did all of those people live in this house? So everything was a lot smaller than I remember.
No, indeed, that's very true. I've had a similar experience with other houses that we've lived in since, and you look back and think, well, yeah, actually, that was quite a small house. How did we all manage to fit into that one place?
Yeah, that's great. So sales, and I want to try to bring a little bit different angle to this. Something that gets talked about on podcasts all the time is sales, and I always want to bring people inside baseball a little bit relative to sales. You and I, from your bio, I saw it's 30 plus years, and again, I've been in the entrepreneurial game for 30 years now. And so the world has changed so significantly. So you're on the tech side from a sales perspective. Give us some insight into what you were doing, 20, 25 years ago, making a sale. And then let's contrast that with what the world's doing up to today. I don't want to get into AI right before the the AI boom hit. I want to give give the folks some idea, particularly the young guys, an idea of what it took 25 years ago versus maybe what it took 3 years ago.
So pretty different worlds, right? And of course, my own career, I went from a certain type of selling to a different type of selling as well, which also kind of blends into this. So my first real sales role was selling mortgages, selling financial services. That was what I was in. And that in itself was very much, it was a face-to-face sale that you made. You brought clients into the office, or you went and visited them at their office. You spoke about their financial circumstances and situation. You had a set of products, if you like, that you could offer to them. And there were expectations, right? Expectations around the number of meetings that you have, around the number of deals that you make, the value of the deals, the sort of typical size, average size of the deals. I remember there was one particular deal that I worked on, which happened to be the chairperson of a construction company that was making, at the time they were building Canary Wharf in London, which is now a big financial hub in London. And it just so happened I was working on a Sunday in our office, and the gentleman walks in and he says, "Oh, I'm interested in buying this apartment." And so the estate agent in the office dealt with him, and then as they went away, he also said, "Oh, I need to sort out a mortgage." So I was there, and maybe by luck, but maybe the fact that I was working on a Sunday, right? Who works on a Sunday? We managed to do a deal, which is actually one of the largest deals that our company had done at the time in terms of the size of the mortgage and the size of the add-on products that were on there. So moving on from that, then I worked in computer sales, and what actually happened is I set up my own business. I set up my own business in partnership with a couple of other guys. Big lesson learned there. Never trust your partners when they say they got cash to put in the business, because they haven't. And you end up spending your money and putting your money in the business. And then when it's time for them to put their money, Oh, I haven't got it. Oh, I need some more time. Oh, this, oh, that.
Let,
So I just
let, let,
decided,
let, let- I'm sorry. Let me interrupt you right there if I could, because one of the things that I preach to particularly people starting out, new entrepreneurs, from a partnership perspective is, and I want to get your feedback on this. You don't have to agree with me, obviously, but I want to get your feedback on this. Is I had a partner early on. It was the biggest mistake I made, but the partner, and I've seen this play out in the multitude of companies that I have helped with partners. There are some that work, but it's been my opinion that the majority of them don't. And here's the reason why for me, and one of the reasons that I've seen subsequent to that is that when I started, I liked having a partner. The unknown. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how the business worked. He had expertise I didn't. I knew things that he didn't. The shared sacrifice, the risk, the conversations, the late nights, sitting there at the office, all of those things. That's all great. And then we started making money. And a couple of years in, as soon as we got profitable, the world changed for everybody. And then the partnership fell into, I do more than you do more than I'm out working. I'm there. I answered the phone on Saturday. And, as soon as it's all great when nobody's making money, as soon as the money starts being made, in your case, sounds a little bit different, that it comes apart. And I realized, and I've never had a partner, that was 13 companies ago. I've never had a partner since. And I realized that I was leaning on the partner, but 6, 8 months into the business, I didn't need the partner. I just didn't know I didn't need the partner. I'm not saying that partners can't work. And I'm talking about regular folks here. I'm not talking about, Silicon Valley deals. I'm talking about regular folks. And that is my counsel to people who are thinking about that is think long and hard the reasons why you need a partner, because a year from now, you're going to tell yourself, I probably could have done that by myself.
Yeah. And that's really, really sage advice there. In my instance, the two other partners, they did bring things that I didn't have, and I brought things that they didn't have. So that was, we were complementary. But the one thing we probably failed to do, because we were young, we were relatively naive, we had a lot of trust. When you're young, you trust your friends, right? And the like. And we didn't nail up the partnership agreement well enough. And I didn't ask them to put the money on the table straight away, because we had a cash flow plan that I put together, which showed when we would need tranches of money and what that tranche of money would look like. And we managed to negotiate a deal where we actually got paid some money to take a building off the hands of the previous landlord. So that helped with the cash flow in the early days. But then when those moments came to put the money in, it wasn't there. So after 10 months, I decided that I can't run this business without their support because of their skills and expertise that they brought. They definitely couldn't run it without me. And I just said, we've got to call it quits. Cut your losses whilst you can and just do it. So close that business down. By chance, on the day that we were actually finally liquidating that business, I got a call from a friend at university just to see how things were going. And I said, well, actually, I'm closing this business down. And he said, well, why don't you come and see what we're doing in my business, and we can, there might be something there for you. So I went and spent a day with him, and what they were doing, and this is like, nearly 30 years ago, actually, it's quite a long time ago. They were making PCs, like getting components in from China, not China so much, but Taiwan, and from Japan and Korea and places like that, putting them together and selling them under their own label. And that market at that time was really big. You could get these magazines like Computer Shopper magazine or PC magazine, and there'd be stacks, so like 500 pages full of ads of mail order computers. And that's what we did.
I remember, yeah.
So you probably bought quite a few from that sort of angle. And I joined him because he wanted to set that up as a business. And the other business they currently had, which was primarily selling components, was what they were doing. So I set up the sales team, set up the sales organization. It was very interesting to learn how to do that and set up even like the databases and the structure of how we would manage deals, the sales cycle, learning all of that over a 5-year period, build it from a standing start to about a £10 million turnover. And that was like really, really good. So that was probably where I got the opportunity to really run a sales team and run a sales organization. I'd learned a lot of selling techniques in the mortgage business, and I transferred that into the computer business. And so I suppose that's one of the lessons learned, is that the selling process or the selling skills are pretty transferable, right, from
Mm-hmm.
one industry to another. But you do start to need to learn the language of the industry and learn the language of what happens there. Fast forward, moved into telecoms, and I worked in telecoms for 25 odd years, and I still do work in telecoms. I still have a day job. And within that, the selling was different, because now you're selling what is quite a complex product, where the complexity is hidden from people, right? And we talk about, in our world, we talk about the dumb pipes, or the pipes that are in the ground, right, that bring you your internet at home, for example. But behind that, there's a huge amount of technology that sits there, and a huge amount of complexity. And when you're dealing with big businesses, as I was dealing with banks, I was dealing with insurance companies, I was dealing with manufacturers, I was dealing with all sorts, the whole selling process has to change. And it took me some time to understand that actually I'm no longer selling to this person who's had in front of me. We're two business people having a conversation about a business outcome that they're looking to achieve, and I'm here to support them and serve them and make sure that they get what they require from this. And once you change that narrative in your mind, then no matter whatever pressure you're getting from your management about the metrics, right, the number of meetings, your funnel metrics, so the amount of deal closures, all of that noise that happens, when you're in front of the customer, you're there to serve them. And it makes selling so much easier, because you're not now trying to push a product, you're trying to push an outcome. And that outcome is always in the interest of the customer. So that, for me, that mindset shift was really, really important as I went through that process, because my first early day sales was very much more about, well, you got the customer in front of you, you got to close that deal whilst the customer is there, sat in front of you. You
Mm-hmm.
can't walk out without a signature. That sort of approach, it doesn't work in a business to business environment. So that's kind of where we are now, right? 3 years, let's say 3 years ago from now. And of course, AI is changing the world massively.
Yeah, I love that that's perfect. This is exactly the answer I was hoping you would give, because I have said I've started this new company, the Kronos Group, which is a peer-to-peer company, for entrepreneurs. And because I had one for 25 years I was in, and it was absolutely the greatest thing I ever did. I wouldn't be sitting here had I not joined that group. And so the way that I am building this company, and I have a young kid, happens to be my nephew, 32 years old, and he knows everything about all of these things. I'm not ignorant about tech. I'm not ignorant about the internet or any of those things. But this new way of selling, I keep saying I'm used to shaking a hand across. Put me in a room with somebody, and away we go. That's you get the call, you make the call, you get the introduction, and then if I can be in the room, I can make that sale. This way of doing it across cameras and doing ads, or whatever the new ways of digitally and email and all of the rest of the things have a depersonalized kind of aspect to it that I am enjoying learning, frustratingly enjoying learning, because it's really uncomfortable. And I'm going to go back to something else that you said that was really, again, you and I are mirroring each other. I tell people all the time, young guys in particular, if you can sell door to door, I'll use this as an example. If you can sell door to door, that means if you can sell, one thing to every 50 doors you knock on, you can do any job in the world. I mean, literally, you just need to know like you said, you need to know the details. You need to be educated and versed on what you're selling. But there's not a more difficult job in the world than selling door to door. And if you can make a living or have some success selling door to door, I think you can have success in almost, I mean, you're not going to go be a doctor, but you get my point.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I didn't do door to door selling. Mine was a different sort of model, but that cold calling is the next equivalent of that, right? Picking up the phone.
That's right. Yeah, and I use that as an outside example, but cold calling. Yeah.
And that fear of rejection is massive, right? And that being made to feel like you're not worthy because it comes from inside you. It's all there. And door knocking or cold calling, they're kind of both equivalents. But if you can get over it's not rejection. They're not rejecting you, right? That's the thing. It's not a personal thing. And so you've got to recognize that actually you are, again, thinking about what you've got to serve someone. If you start to think of it that way, and okay, the time's not right for this person, I'm going to go on to the next person, and take that sort of perspective on it, it makes life a lot easier. But you're right. If you can do door-to-door selling and you make 1 in 50 or 1 in 100, that is a real good success actually within that sort of space. And similarly, cold calling, it's
Mhm.
1%, 2% success rate on getting appointments is pretty typical. And if you're making 10%, then that's really good. But of course, there's the qualification of the lead or the qualification of whose door you're knocking on or who you're calling that can increase the success rate of that.
How important was that in those early years for you as time went on, that cold calling? For me, it was just absolutely critical. That rejection, to your point, that I could hear 100 no's and it didn't destroy my day. I had to learn
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. In the early days in that computer company that I was setting up, absolutely cold calling was what we did, right? We phoned up people, we phoned up businesses, small businesses primarily. We had what was the Yellow Pages. I don't think they even publish it anymore from
No.
all the different regions, and we would literally just hit the phones, and every day you're phoning and looking to make a deal. And actually, we were pretty successful in doing that because we were at the right time with the right sort of product. Everyone wanted to get a personal computer. Everyone wanted to look at how they could bring their business up. And in those days, I don't know, the IBM PC, personal PC cost something like $4,000, $5,000 or pounds, straight dollars to pound conversion. And we
Mhm.
were selling a computer for £1,000 or £1,500. And so there's a huge difference there. So people could, it was democratizing the access to computing power in many ways. So it was a good time to be building a business. And we went from standing start to 10 million. Maybe we could have done more, but we always had the cash flow, right? We were self-funding our business, where there wasn't loans from the bank or loans from other people. And so I learned a lot about running stock control within that, which is kind of weird, right? You're in a sales role, but understanding what stock turnover cycles look like, how the margin impact is on your business, and what the margin impact means to the ability to compound that across the different stock that you're selling. And it became, in some ways, when I'm talking about it now, it sounds quite complex, but it was really interesting to see the impact of how we were compounding the growth of the business whilst in a market where the average price of your unit is coming down, because that's what happens with computers, right? As the things get older, the price comes down. So it was an interesting time, that was.
Yeah, that's it. And it was happening quick too. I mean, the commoditization of computers in those days. I mean, it was just seems like it was every quarter there was something new and the pricing kept coming
Right.
down. Once
Yeah.
it hit, it just was nuts.
Yes. Yeah. New chips, new processors, new memory, new hard drives, and it was just constant change.
Yeah, you learn really quick what your net gross margins are and what cash flow is and what the turn rate on your AR is. All these things that most new entrepreneurs, yeah, I'll get to. And I'm like, no, you're not going to get to it. It's going to get to you. Trust me, if you don't
Exactly.
know. That's right.
Exactly. You
If
need
you
to
don't know
learn
what
it,
that AR
especially
turn is, right
especially
away,
as an
you're going to be in
entrepreneur.
trouble. Yeah. Let me go back to your partnership. I'm curious about that because you only went 10 months. So many times entrepreneurs want to, because I think it's by our nature, push. I'm going to make it work. I'm going to make it
Yes.
happen. You were a young man, smart enough to not do that. Here in America, maybe there's a bit of a cultural difference. I don't know. You tell me, but we don't like to fail. I mean, if you come from the streets like I did, we don't like to fail. And so you're just going to, tell yourself. Now, again, I have made fortunes because of that approach.
Mm-hmm.
I have lost fortunes because of that approach, right?
Yeah.
So it's both sides of it. From your perspective, I'm fascinated by that at 10 months, you were able to say, this is not going to work and I'm not going to keep pushing this thing uphill. Give me a little bit more insight into that.
So none of us likes to fail. And absolutely, I felt like a failure when I decided that that's what's going to be the case. But then when I stopped and thought about it, it wasn't me. It wasn't my inability. In fact, the forecasts and everything that I put together were accurate. We were making track, and we were actually doing better than the forecasts. What I lacked in the if you like, the box to carry on pushing through was these guys had their black book of contacts. They had experience in real estate that I didn't have. And primarily our business was a real estate business. It was about selling and renting out property. And that was where the bulk of the cash flow was going to come from. So without that, I wasn't going to fund them anymore. I wasn't going to, I myself was running out of cash. I was young, right? I didn't have that much money to be able to put into that. So it was, I suppose you might call it a clinical decision that, well, I can't give them any more money. They haven't brought to the table what they said they were going to bring in terms of money. They're trying to sell their way out of the fact that they haven't got cash. And I know the sales cycle is going to be 3 months, 4 months for a particular deal to happen. I could project that it's not going to, we're not going to make it, because then the next tranche falls due, and then the next tranche falls due. So it was just a matter of, let's do a clean cut now, rather than trying to push through, trying to say, okay, well, I'll take your shares off you. I'll make it work myself. It was just, it didn't sit right. And also at that time, I was in the late 20s. I was engaged to get married. I kind of wanted some stability in my new married life, right? Rather than trying to run this business that I didn't feel I had the full skill set for. So it made sense just to stop it and cut it.
I always like to, on the podcast, got a lot of young guys listen, a lot of guys in London, as a matter of fact, over in the UK. And whenever some terms come up that I think that people won't understand, I make assumptions, right? Because I deal with them all of the time. And I like to stop and kind of make sure that everybody knows what we're talking about. So if you could just in 1 minute, talk about you ran out of cash, the sales cycle, and then you had a new tranche coming up, right? You and I know what that means, but tell that to a layman as something that they might look out for in their business going forward, why that was so disastrous.
Yeah, perfect. And also there are times when I will use British English, which doesn't necessarily translate into American English or vice versa. So so when you think about a business, you've got the cash going out of the business, right? And that's pretty much fixed. You've got wages, you've got rent, you've got overheads, you've got the various overheads of a business. And you've got your sales that are coming in that are bringing in the cash. And what we had in our business was that we knew that our business was going to ramp, so we were going to get more cash in. But there's a point where your overheads are there, your cash is kind of coming in, but there's that inflection point, right, where the two need to marry. But we were short of that, so we were going to have to put some money in it, and that was the tranche of money, right? The next payment, if you like, from us to the business to get us over that hump. And when you have a sales cycle of 3 or 4 months, it means that you start your process of selling something now, but the actual money doesn't necessarily come in, or the contract doesn't get signed until 3 or 4 months down the road. And that's typical in real estate in the UK. It's about a 3 to 4 month sales cycle. It can be a little bit longer from the moment someone says, yes, I'll buy this property, to actually the sale completing and the money's getting exchanged. So in that period, you've got to fund yourself, right? You've got to keep your lights on your business. So what do? You try and sell more. You try and get more and more deals of that nature. So you're able to build a funnel, as we call it, right? A funnel of deals that are going to come through that will see you through those moments when things are a little bit quiet and you're still going to pay your overheads. So hopefully that explains what I meant, what I said there.
Yes. Very well said. Yeah, you have to finance your sales. You have to finance the money you haven't got, but you've sold, and somebody's got to pay the bills. And so if you don't have a bunch of money in the bank, a little something like cash flow is going to come up and bite you. Now, if you could pre-sell all of that stuff, you wouldn't have that problem. Problem is, in your case, you had a 3 to 4 month lag, which is brutal. And I've seen 30-day lags wipe companies out. So, for a 30-day turn. So AR is everything.
It said that there was a point where IBM nearly ran out of cash, right? And who thought a massive company like IBM would run out of cash? But cash is king in business. So no matter how big or small the business, that cash flow is so important.
I agree. When you hear, we'll change subjects a little bit. That was excellent. When you hear somebody say, I want to be successful, what do you think they actually mean when they say that?
Oh, this kind of goes to the heart of what Success Matters podcast is about. So,
I did my research.
let's break this down. There's a number of factors that people use for success, right? And you and I, having had a sales background and having had a commercial background, oftentimes that success is measured by either a metric that the company has given you as the salesperson, right? Your sales target. It's making President's Club. It's doing this. It's doing that. And that becomes sometimes what people associate with success. There's then also the, if you like, the societal things, right? The societal expectations that someone who's successful drives a Ferrari or has this big house or, wears a Rolex watch or goes on 10 holidays a year or whatever it is, right? There's that kind of thing. But so when someone says, I want to be successful, my first question is, well, what does success mean to you? That's the first thing, right? And different people at different stages in their life will have a different motivation of success. So when you're young and you've got a young family, then success could be that I can pay for their school fees, or, I got enough cash coming in that I can buy a bigger house because my kids are so small, because there's 9 of us living in a 3-bedroom house, or, whatever the thing is. So that can be one of those sorts of metrics. But as you go through life and you realize that actually there's a lot more to life than necessarily those things, success metrics change, and life happens to you as well, right? So there will be moments where your thought of success is one thing, but something happens, you fall ill, you have something happens, your house burns down and you forgot to renew the insurance, whatever it was. These things change your trajectory of success, and they change how you think about success. And in my instance, it was my dad died when I was 14 years of age and he was 60. And at that moment in time, I realized that life is not permanent. It was like one of those things, right? That we're all going to die anyway. So what may be a trajectory of success that I thought I was going to have, it just stopped, right? As a teenager, you've got all these dreams of what you're going to do. And it's like, well, we're all going to die anyway. So what does that mean? And it was quite profound. And I've only just recognized that now that I've turned 60, how deep an effect that had on me at that moment in time. So in answer to your question, first thing I would say is, well, what does success mean to you?
For me, I come from nothing. I have 8 brothers and sisters. I'm child number 7. My mother had 6 kids when she was 23 years old. And so I didn't have children until I was 28 years old. And my meaning of success prior to having children was whatever I could gather. I was working for a person, helping her run her company. We took it from 1 million to 5 million in the transportation space. And I thought making money was all that I cared about. Cars on the wall, trips, the whole 9 yards, and sports, all I cared about. And then my son was born, and my entire life changed. And all of a sudden, I understood that I had something to live for. I was a different human being. My listeners will know this very well. One second, I had my wife, and she was pregnant. And the next second, as we all know, she's no longer pregnant. And what happened in that next second changed my life. I had to go out and I had to crush, I had to destroy, I had to chase, I had to work, I had to sacrifice, I had to risk. And I wanted to go do all of those things willingly, because those children, mine, I only had one at the time, I have 3 now, were going to have a better life than I was. And I'd be damned if I was not going to do everything I could, regardless of the sacrifice, to make that happen. And so I always say, and I've had huge car collections and big cars and trips around the world, and I've done all of the things that I have done. And the only thing that matters to me, there's 2 things. My children all graduated from high school, which when you come from abject poverty, generational, institutional poverty, you're not used to seeing those things. And my children graduated from high school. And secondarily, my second son is about to go in the military. My other son is already in the military. They're doing fantastically. I talk with them all of the time. Me and them are very good friends. My daughter is in her 20s, still lives with us here. I have dinner with her almost every night. And so I broke that history that I come from. And I also proved my version of success is you can work 15-hour days, you can build companies, you can push and stress and risk and do all of those things. And I've been married almost 30 years. I still have a family life. I still have children that are in my lives and appreciate their dad, and I appreciate them. And so for me, that is the meaning of success. And that was really better. I understand it better now than I did when I was 28 when he was born, right? Then I was
Mhm.
young and full of testosterone and just wanted to go crush the world. But as I look back on it now, it was never the cars, it was never the trips, it was never any of those things. It was that my children had a better life. My life changed when I became a father, which is why that's my number one piece of advice. Young guys will ask me, what is it? What would I go back and tell my 22-year-old self? And I'd say, don't wait to have kids till you're 28. Have kids now, because kids bring money, they bring success, they bring a part of you out that you don't understand, that you can't ever find. Dogs don't do it, friends don't do it, family don't do it. Have children, you will go to the moon.
It's true. Yeah. As soon as that baby pops out, life is different, right? In
Yeah.
that instant, life changes massively. And what you just reflecting on what you said, and also to the immigrant story, because the immigrant story is very similar to the story that you have of your
Mhm.
upbringing, which is, yeah, oftentimes immigrants land in a country where they haven't got much in terms of either support or finances, and they have to really work hard, right, to get to where they want to get to. And that story is born out in my family, right? It's born out in yours. Isn't quite the immigrant story, but it's a very similar sort of thing, right? Not ending up in that cycle of poverty, but actually doing things to step out of it and really working hard to make that happen. And now your kids have got a better life as a result of that. And
Mhm.
that's the life my parents wanted their kids to have, a better life. So that's what they
Yes.
strove for, and that's what they fought for.
I grew up in the hood, and I always say poor is poor. There was all different colors. There was all different people. I grew up in the 70s and 80s when we called them the boat people, came over from the
Mhm.
Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, and they would live 15 people to an apartment right there in the middle of it. It mixed in with all the Puerto Ricans and the Asians and the black and the whites. And you know what we all had in common? We were all poor.
Yeah.
Everybody was poor, and you just have to work your way out of that poor. I agree with that. That's great conversation. I appreciate your perspective on that. But that's my idea of a success. The other thing I'll tell you, I want to get your feedback on this, is I tell the young folks, young guys, 25, 30, 35, even 40, that if life is a 100 gig hard drive, when I was an average 25-year-old probably has a hard drive that's 20% full. If we agree it's 100 gig, maybe it's 20% full. And then you get to be my age, I'm 57, and all of the experiences and all of the things I do, let's say that that's an 80% hard drive full.
Mhm.
Except that when I was 25, if you were to ask me this question, number one, I wouldn't have known what a hard drive was. But when I was 25, I would have said it was 80% full, maybe probably 100% full, because you couldn't tell me anything.
Yeah.
And then now that I'm 57, and if you were to tell me it's 80% full, I'll say, oh, no, 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 no. I'm going to die before I've even touched the amount of things that I want to learn, right? So I'm
Mhm.
telling you mine's 20% full. So my advice to the younger guys are realize that your hard drive is 20% full and try to fill that thing up, because when you get to our age, you're going to realize there is a whole lot more to learn than what you can even imagine, but we get lost because we're young. What's your
Mm.
response to that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's one of those things, right? None of us can see into the future. We live in the life that we have in the moment that we have today, and
Mm-hmm.
so in that moment, we don't necessarily realize that there's so much more potential within us. Taking that hard drive sort of analogy, um, so if you're in your mid 20s, early 20s, yes, you may know that you've got the potential, but you can't really see which way you're going with it because you haven't experienced enough around the world. You and I have the advantage that we've now experienced a whole load of things, right? We've run
Mm-hmm.
businesses that have been successful, that have failed, that have, we've been in different sort of settings and everything. So all of those experiences have added to the richness of our understanding of the world. And you're right, you get to a point where as a youngster, you might think, oh, no one can teach me anything, especially, yeah, particularly when you get to kind of like, I don't know, 40s, there's like a fixed mindset almost happens. But the reality is, there's still so much more that you can learn, and there's so much more that you can do. And that hard drive is is clearing out all the old stuff to make room for the new stuff. And it's actually really important to clear out the old stuff and make room for the new stuff, because if you just hold on to the old, then you're holding on to what was rather than what can be. And that's a really important way to look at life.
That's fantastic. I love that. Yeah, the converse of what I said too is I remember I was running the company. I was 28 years old. Everybody was in their 40s and 50s. And the older guys, I remember two guys, Dale was the name of one in particular, said to me something that I hated. And it stuck in my head, but I hated it. He said, "You don't know anything, young man, until you're 40 years old." He was 55 at the time. And I thought he was an old man. Right? Yeah. He said, "You just don't know anything until you're 40. And I was like, "You're working for me. What are you talking about? You can't talk to me like that." Sanjay, I'm telling you, if there's anything I learned in this world that I know to be 100% true, is that you really don't know anything until you're about 40. You just haven't lived enough.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And to be fair, when you get to 40, you still don't know that much.
Sure.
And right. Even when you get to 60, you still don't know that much.
You still don't know that much, right?
Constant cycle of evolution, especially when we talk about things like AI, right? And that whole world, the way in which things are changing.
Yeah, that's true. Let me ask you, so what's something you're mentoring now? Mm-hmm. What is something that you would tell a 30-year-old? I keep talking about the young guys I work with. A lot of the guys that follow us, that listen to this podcast, are young entrepreneurs, people on the outside looking in, mostly men. They like, my approach to the world. And so in that context, as we're talking to them, what's something that a 30-year-old now would disagree with that you believe?
Oh, well, that's a tough question. That is.
I'll prime it a little bit. Bit while you think about it. From my side is work ethic. Mm-hmm. A 30-year-old is fed by social media that if you work longer than a 4-hour work week and you're not on the south of France with somebody in a bikini in a yacht, then you're doing, while someone else is earning your passive income and you're just sitting cashing checks, then, and of course that's, I'm being a little ridiculous, but you get my point. Then you're doing something wrong. And so my answer to that question is that I don't think that, generally speaking, the 30-year-old has any context what it takes to be successful, because largely the internet, which 85% of what I see on the internet relative to success has no bearing in reality. So that would be my answer to that question.
Yeah. And just to explore that answer a little bit more, I think we tar George Generation Z, or whichever the right generation letter is for them, with the same brush. They're not all of that niche, because I do actually mentor quite a few mid-20s to 30-year-olds, and they do have the work ethic. I think the one thing that is different, though, is we had to pick up the phone to cold call. We had to go door knocking. We had to do all of those things. In the world we live in today with technology, that's been replaced by sending LinkedIn messages, sending emails, picking up the phone once maybe and not getting a reply and saying, "Oh, okay, they weren't there. Forget it. They won't follow up in the same way." So I think the not so much the work ethic, but the experience hasn't been kind of brought in, because life for them was different. Life is for us. I don't know about you, but I would hesitate to contact a business prospect on WhatsApp if you use WhatsApp, right? I would hesitate to just cold message someone on WhatsApp. Whereas for them, WhatsApp is their everyday channel, especially in Europe. I know in the US, WhatsApp isn't as widely used. It's more just the messaging apps. But to use a messaging app, or to use Instagram or TikTok or Snapchat, which is things that I don't use, right? I don't sell my services through those. I use LinkedIn, which is more traditional. So I think there's a contrast, and I was hoping to buy some time to give some thought to more what you were saying, right? What do I believe in that a 30-year-old would say isn't so? And I'm stumped by that question, actually, because there's probably lots of things that I can't see in myself that I project, right, as belief systems, as things you should be doing, that my 23-year-old son or my 26-year-old daughter might say, "Dad, what the hell are you going on about?" It might be like, the world isn't like that anymore. But I can't.
Well, I'll give you another one. We kind of alluded to it a second ago, but I'll give you another one: is go have kids.
Yeah.
They're fed a
Yeah. Go
very
ahead, please.
different diet today than we
Mhm.
were. And again, your parents were poor and yet they had children. And there are a bunch of immigrant kids here in southern Nashville, in just south of Nashville, where I am, Muslim mostly, who have great stories. They're born here in the country and they're like, 28 years old. And I'm always telling them, go have kids. And like, I can't afford to. And I say, how many brothers and sisters you have? And this one group in particular, and I know the answer, 7.
Yeah.
And how many did your parents have when they came here? 5. And how much money did they have? None. And what year
Mm.
was that? 1977. You know what life was like in 1977, right? I
Yeah.
didn't have air conditioning till I was 30, right? I didn't have a phone in my house. I had to walk 2 miles. And then you didn't know if somebody was going to be there when you called, right? Buses and just the whole different world. And so that perspective, I agree with you that there are good, hardworking people, young men, 100%, and I work with them every day. I was generalizing for sure, but again, I think the ones who can understand the work that you and I put in and what it took to earn a living, and they can take that and apply that in the new world, are going to find themselves way ahead. I've had 10,000 employees over the last 25 years, and if there's one thing that is consistent, that is that today, to be above average, to be exceptional, you just have to be average, because the mean has lowered, because I see it all of the time. And so
Yeah.
in that context, I say, if you have that work ethic, push on that, because I think that may be a differentiator. Even with all of the technology today, I think that's going to be a differentiator in the future. So that'd be 2 things right there, I suppose. Go have children. If you're 30 years old, you should have children.
Yeah, and you raise a good point there, right? Our parents' generation had children without any money there.
Right.
I think back to your point about social media and this image that people portray that, oh, I'm working only 4 hours, or living in Bali or south of France, and look at all the money I'm bringing in, and what a wonderful lifestyle. We forget that that's a little snapshot that they've taken of time, and they're probably not living that lifestyle. That's probably not the villa that they're living in. That's probably not the car that they're driving. They're probably doing 16 hours a day to just keep their head above water, but they're kind of projecting this image because that's the image that they're trying to sell to get their customers and to get their potential future buyers. And so if you buy into that belief system, people do have passive incomes. Absolutely. People do have those lifestyles. I'm not saying that they don't, but the majority do not. The majority have
Unicorns.
the
Yeah.
majority, the unicorns, right? And you have to plug hard. And something that's quite common here in the UK is a lot of people moving to Dubai, because Dubai is a pretty much tax-free location. And what happens is they see the lifestyle there and think, okay, that's great, but they forget it's 40 degrees centigrade. Yes, okay, you've got air conditioning everywhere, but the work ethic is really, really high. And if you go from here thinking life's going to be easy, because the work ethic, you've come from with the wrong work ethic to there, it's a real shock to the system, because the work ethic is really, really high there, and people are hustling, right? They're hustling all the time to make their money, and they're making as much as they can in as short period of time as they can. It's all tax free, and then they're either coming back to the UK, or they're going elsewhere in the world, or they're doing that. So it's it's a different lifestyle, and you might look at it on paper and think, wow, that's great, but actually you got to experience it. So back to the experience we had of hustling for what we did, whatever that hustle looked like. Sometimes it is literally door knocking. Other times, for me, it was more the academic, right? It was through education that I managed to, my whole family managed to kind of make sure we weren't in poverty. It was, education was the thing that helped elevate us. And that's very much in the Asian society, that is very high up there. Education is the way you step out of poverty, or you don't end up back in poverty. That's the metric that's often used.
Yeah, that's perfect, and that dovetails into my next question in a way, which is, everyone likes to talk about. No, I'm going to ask a different question. This dovetails into this question too. Mentorship.
Yes.
Society, again, today, from my perspective, culturally, I think largely due because of the internet and influencers, Western society almost tries to put the elders, we'll call ourselves elders in this case, so we'll talk about you and me, but elders out in the pasture, way too, to use an American phrase, way too early, and they lose the value of all of that information. And I see
Mm.
that as a societal problem. And so one of the things that I'm always telling people, I'll tell you a very quick story. A couple of young guys hired me to help them with their business. They were updating Corvettes back in California. They had to move into a new building and they were scared about it. They reached out to me. They hired me to help them. Boom. They moved into the new building, kept the old building. The old building became their overflow because it was more work than they could do. It was fantastic. The two brothers, 2 years into it, they'd been paying me great success. The younger brother says to me one day, Jerry, we're paying you $550 an hour as a consultant. It's really tough to justify that. How do you justify that? And I said, well, you could go back and grow up the way that I did in poverty and learn all the lessons. And I've been stabbed and shot at and beaten within an inch of my life and succeeded and paid taxes as an 11-year-old and grew out of it and started my first company at 28 and failed in that one. And I've had dozens since, and I've been in highs and lows, and I've seen everything in between. And then you guys called me and I was able to give you the benefit of all of that. So you could go live that 40-odd year existence, or you could pay me $550 an hour and I can save you the time, the effort, the loss of money, and teach you all of those lessons. My point being there, how important are, for the younger guys, for everybody, me, I need a mentor. How important is a mentor?
Very, very, very important. And that's one of the bits of advice that I give to every person that comes to me, who's particularly those in their 20s, is find a mentor and think about the sort of mentorship that you want. And of course, it doesn't have to be one person. It can be more than one person. And think about what you want to get from that mentorship. That's kind of really important. So therefore then find someone who's that. And oftentimes it's related to career or, that sort of thing. So if you want a career path, well, find someone who's like 2 or 3 levels above where you are right now, or someone who's where you want to be, and get their guidance and advice on what to do. If it's business mentoring, it is find someone who's got the scars, right? You've got the scars, absolutely. And find someone who understands cash flow, understands sales cycles, understands what the stock control systems need to think about, all those things. Bring that person on board. Or if it's just around, well, I'm not really sure what I want to do, right? It brings some, have those conversations with the mentor around that. And it can be family. Family is often, back to your point around elders, elders have got a whole set of life experiences. And we don't lean on them enough. And I'm as guilty. I don't lean on my elders, although I'm now of an age where the elders in my family, there aren't many left, right? But I don't lean on them enough. And family can be some of the best mentors around. And, they almost 99% of the time have your best interest at heart as well. So they're always going to give you some good, sage advice. Mentors are very, very important.
Yeah, I always say if you want to be healthy, you want to get in shape, and you're obese and you're trying to get your life together, don't find another obese person to help you get into shape, right? Get yourself a trainer, get yourself a nutritionist who looks like you'd like to look, maybe one in particular that was fat before and was able to skinny up themselves. Kind of, they've been in shape their whole lives. I'm not sure they're going to be able to give you the input and the feedback that you're going to look for. So from a mentorship, I would say find somebody who's done what you want to do and go talk to them about it. And then don't look for a friend. If you're looking for a friend, that's not the right mentor.
No, that's very true as well. Yes. Because then they won't give you the advice as well. They might hold back, right? If once you create that friendship, they might not give you that real honest advice that you need, or the real honest feedback that you need.
It's so true. In the last few minutes we got left, I like to do a little speed round.
Okay.
Where I'll just like 4 or 5 questions here, and just doesn't have to be one word answers, but just off the top of your head, don't think about it too much. And let's see what kind of answers you give me if we could on this. The first one is sales. Is it more about listening or talking?
Listening for sure.
Yeah. Revenue or reputation?
Revenue.
We're going to come back to that one. We'll finish with that one. Perfect. Discipline or talent?
Discipline.
Yeah, perfect. I agree. Most overrated leadership trait?
Being abrasive.
What's one word for real success?
Happiness.
Okay, let's go back in our last couple of minutes. Discipline or talent? Or excuse me, revenue or reputation? And revenue, you said revenue.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, depends on the context, right.
Okay.
Our conversation has been around business, and when it's business, then revenue generally is the thing that you want to make sure you're getting, but you can't get revenue without reputation. So it was a bit of a kind of like double-edged sword for me there as to which is the
Yes.
right answer.
Yes, that's perfect. And I set it up that way because I always say that money follows, it doesn't lead.
Yes.
So, for in my experience, if you let money lead, it might work in the short term, it might work in the middle term, but long term, I think it's going to catch up to you. So you're right. It's an either or question. But I always like to use this as an opportunity to say money follows, it doesn't lead.
But money is an outcome from like
That's right.
your beliefs, your behaviors, your whatever you kind of follow. Money is just the outcome. It's not the thing. So that's the
Yes.
important part.
It's so true. So we got 2 minutes left. I want to give you a chance to talk about yourself. Where can they find you? What are you doing? How can that be of value to the people listening? Please take a couple of minutes and give the listeners a rundown.
Yeah, sure. So thank you. And it's been a very great conversation, Jerry. And thank you for all those questions that you are asking. So if people want to get in touch, the best way for them to do so is either find me on LinkedIn, Sanjai Mehta. That's basically all one word in LinkedIn, or email me, sanjay.mehta@successmatterscoaching.com. What do? Is I help people find their path. I help people who are thinking about their life, either in a kind of individual life coaching sort of basis or on a business basis. And if your business is one where you're thinking, okay, what's next? As you found out in this discussion, I've run businesses, I've closed business down, I've built businesses up, I've learned a heck of a lot around actually running the business in itself. And I know a lot about the sales side of things. And so when you think about the three legs of a stool, I've got all of them, and I've got the coaching skills as well to help you with that. So give me a shout if you're looking for any guidance or help on any aspect of your life or your business.
Perfect. And last question. What does success look like for you now personally?
Oh, success for me now has changed. Yeah, the metrics have changed hugely. So for me, it's all about being in service of others. And if I can bring about a change to someone's life through either conversations of this nature, through my coaching, through charity work, then that's for me is success. So one person's life changing has a massive ripple effect. And that ripple effect, goes way beyond whatever I can imagine. So that's what success means to me now.
I love that. And I want all the listeners, if you're listening, if you're watching this on YouTube when this comes out, I always point this out, Sanjay. I always appreciate when you talked about your children in their 20s. I think you said one is in their 20s and one's a teenager. Your eyes light up. It happens every time, no matter what we're talking about. Whenever someone stops, we're always these business conversations and the subject of their children come up. There's a pause and there's a light up when people talk about their kids. So I know you know that, but good on you. You seem like a man in full, my friend.
Thank you.
I appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. It's been a pleasure.
All right.